Welcome to the session. This is Andrea Abel, and she'll be talking about neologisms in variety.
Yeah, thank you for your introduction. Now, I would like to talk about the special kind of neologisms. Oops. There's something happening with the slides? No. I can see the next slide, but it's not on the screen. Okay. Oops. So this is the overview of my talk. So first I would like to present introduce our work and to present some related work. Then we would like to talk about the methods and the data we used, and then I would like to present some preliminary results. Now first, what are our research goals? So the main idea was to semi-automatically extract neologism candidates for the German standard variety used in South Tyrol in northern Italy. And we would like to observe and evaluate trends of the local standard variety of the German language, and on this basis try to consider new terms, new words, new lexemes for future editions of the Variantenwörterbuch des Deutschen, which is the dictionary of variants of the German language. So maybe not all of you exactly know where South Tyrol is and what the language situation in South Tyrol is. So I would like to make a small excursus. So South Tyrol is in the middle of the Alps and the north of Italy, on the border to Austria. It is quite a small region with 400,000 inhabitants. It is in the middle of the Alps with some southern flair, and it is a bilingual region with German and Italian being the most frequent languages, and not only Italian, but also German has an official status in this region. And for this reason, it is important to do research on the development of the German standard variety used in South Tyrol. And this approach is based on the concept of pluricentricity of the German language. And this concept assumes that there are different types of standard varieties used in the German-speaking areas. And these language varieties in these countries or regions have an official status, they are taught at schools, they have codices, and so on. And so South Tyrol is also an interesting object for linguistic studies because of its role as a so-called national semi-center from such a pluricentric perspective. This means South Tyrol is not a country or not a nation, but a region, and therefore it's called a semi-center for its marginal position within the German-speaking area, and the language contact situation as it is in this bilingual region. Now, I have to start with some definitions. So if we talk about neologisms, we're talking about lexical innovation, and we can distinguish between different types of lexical innovations, neologisms, occasionalisms, and other innovations. And our focus today is on neologisms, and on one specific type of neologisms, which are new lexemes, and we do not consider any new meanings as we heard in the previous talk. Now, the focus is, we have to be more precise, so the focus is not on neologisms, but on neologism candidates, because we don't know yet if they will be used over time. So the definition of our approach to of a neologism candidate is that they are new lexemes, they are not lexicalized yet. They are used in a general or common academic language, so they are not, we are not talking about specialized language in a narrow sense, but kind of common academic language. We do not consider any misspellings or typos, named entities, or inflected forms of lexicalized words. And at this stage of our work, it is not possible to make a distinction or to distinguish these neologism candidates from possible occasionalisms. Now, what do we talk about if we talk about STyrLogisms? So STYR is an acronym for South Tyrolean neologisms. Generally speaking, they have the same characteristics as overall or as neologism candidates, but their use is limited to South Tyrol only. This means that they are not present in huge German reference corpora, such as the DKV or the German neologism platform Wortwarte, which is being developed at the DWDS in Berlin. Now, there are different approaches in order to detect neologisms. So you can use language resources like known word lists or known patterns. And this approach is often applied to one single set of data. Then you can also use statistical measures or machine learning approaches. And obviously, there is the possibility to combine these two approaches. But let's try to go into detail a little bit. So for the first approach, the use of language resources, there are methods based on known words, and they use lists of compiled or lists from existing lexicographic and lexical resources, dictionaries, corpora, filters that can be used to eliminate non-words or named entities, and so on. Then there are methods based on word patterns, and they use kind of morphological or lexical cues. Then the second approach was the one of the usage of statistical measures or machine learnings, and these methods usually are used to evaluate the diachronic development of the use of single words. And then, as already mentioned, there is the combination of methods. So in our approach, we use the first method. So we use existing word lists and existing corpora and lexical databases. So the first step is to retrieve web pages through web crawling. Then the web pages have to be clean, so boilerplates or duplicates and so on have to be removed. Then we can build a corpus and extract a word list. And then we can filter them with the known word lists and remove any kind of non-words and so on. And then the result is a list of possible neologisms or neologism candidates that we linguists can analyze. And then there are, of course, some similar projects going on at the moment, like NeoCrawler or Wortwarte, or the Neolog project done here in the Netherlands. Now, concerning the data processes, we used 45 seed URLs using online newspapers or magazines of the regions. And after 2 days of crawling, 250,000 URLs were processed. And then very short or very long documents were removed. And the final or the corpus that we received at a size of 4.5 million tokens. Now, our reference data, this was the general German web corpus TKau, and then several lists of named entities, terminological terms used in our regions, then the whole list of lemmatas present in the Dictionary of German Variants, and the words present in the Wortwarte project. And after comparing the data, all these data sets, more than 4,500 STyrLogism candidates were left for manual checking. For the linguists, for the analysis, a web interface was created, and as you can see here, I brought you some screenshots. There is the list with the neologism candidates. From this list, we can access Concordance to have a closer look at some example sentences. We can also have a look at a larger context. And furthermore, we can also access the original data where the data come from. And then if we can decide if to keep or not to keep words, so we can check it, and we can add any comments and so on. And then the results are shown in a known page, and here we can or keep them or delete them and so on. Now let's have a look at some very preliminary results. So the current status of work is that we have evaluated about half of the STyrLogism candidates, and we selected 234 candidates for further analysis. Now I would like to show you some of the words we extracted, and we try to do a preliminary classification of our candidates. So one group of words are kind of legal or administrative common terms that are very often used in newspapers and so on. One example is the Landeszusatzvertrag, which means a regional amendment of a national collective agreement, used with this word form very often in the region. Then we have so-called variants. These are common words used in the standard German in South Tyrol, but not yet lexicalized. So this means that you can't find them in the Dictionary of Variants yet. One example is the Wahlsektion, which means it's a part of a municipality whose inhabitants go to the same voting center. Then we can find a lot of compounds, and these are compounds which contain components of already lexicalized variants of the standard German used in South Tyrol. One example is the Luxuspensionär, which is a retired person receiving a very high pension. And this is a very particular word because pensionär in the dictionary is described as a variant used in Switzerland and in Austria, but it is not clear if it is used also in South Tyrol. So for instance, in Germany, usually you use the not pensionär, but Rentner. So even another word is used. And then we noticed that often we find common words with uncommon word formation features. So sometimes we don't even know if this is due to some misspellings or typos in the text, but as this feature is quite present or is quite frequent in our corpus, so we saw that it is important to mention them. So one example is the Mittelstandperson. So usually in German you would expect a linking element in such a compound, which is a linking S in this case. So you would expect a word formation like Mittelstandsperson. So the word means it's a middle class person. And this word has also some other characteristics. We had a closer look at the usage of this word Mittelstandsperson with a simple Google search, and this word is used in quite old texts. So it seems that it has a quite antiquated meaning, and sometimes we see that we can notice that some older words are still being used in our region. And then maybe the most interesting part are what we call true neologism candidates. One example could be the Vollautonomie, which means full political autonomy but remaining part of the Italian state. So this is a word which has been using for some years now in political debates, and so it's a very frequent word and everyone knows what it means. And we think that this is a word which probably will be stable over time as well. Then we tried also to do a preliminary characterization of this kind of true neologism candidates. So what they are used for. So the aims are to find kind of humorous or ironic, sarcastic way of expressions. Sometimes they're used for polemic debates, or they simply are plays on words or kind of creative language use, or they're used to design new circumstances. So I brought you one example, kind of humorous way of expression. So we found the word Donnerwetterer, which is someone railing against someone or something. So the word Donnerwetter in English is the literal translation would be thunderstorm, and here it is used to refer to a person who cries or who. Then, which kind of features do these neologism candidates have? They very often they are compound words, of course, and sometimes they are very complex or long compounds. One example could be the Regiokornbrot. This is bread made of regional grain, and so some years ago there was a project going on called Regiokorn, which means regional grain, and this now is used to refer to any kind of bread where you use grain from the region, and also some compounds are used. then we notice that there is some tendency of turning phrasings into single words. One example is the Mundaufreißer. This means a person talking big, and usually we know that there is a phrasing like das Maul aufreißen or den Mund aufreißen. Very often, or usually this quite rough expression, das Maul aufreißen, is used. So Maul is the mass used only for animals and not for persons. But the single word used, the compound, is something new or not a known form. Then sometimes you find loan translation from Italian, which is obvious. One example is, for instance, the Vertrauensjurist. In English, this is the defense lawyer. And in German, usually you would call this person Verteidiger. But in Italian, you have the expressions difensore di fiducia, which means lawyer of or trusted lawyer. And so this is a kind of literal translation of this Italian term. Also in German, you have this word Verteidiger to refer to this person. And then you have some analogies to lexicalized variants used in South Tyrol. And one nice example is the Schwammelklauber, which means is a person picking mushrooms. And this is a very nice example because the first part of the compound is Schwammel, and usually, and this is a variant used in Austria or in South Tyrol only. In Germany, you would say Pilz for mushroom, but it is a lexeme in the dictionary of variants. And then you have the part Klauber, which means harvest. It is also a lexeme present in the dictionary of standard variants, but it is there is a note that this is there is diasystematic note that this is a limitation or a case which is quite dialectal. But then you have another lemma in the dictionary, which is called Apfelklauber. And Apfelklauber means harvester for apples. And this word has no indication, no note that it may be dialectal or whatever. So there is no diasystematic remark. But this word means that this is a harvester of apples that get paid for this activity. In this case, Schwammelklauber is a person that does this activity for leisure only. So it's a quite an interesting term. And this is used in the common language very often, but it seems a little bit strange to see this in written form. And last but not least, we have certain domains where we find these neologism candidates, which is in politics, environment, tourism, leisure, and food. Last example is the Vollkorn pizzetta, which means it's a very small pizza made of whole grain. And pizzetta is used in Italian, I think in English too, but maybe I think in Germany you would say mini pizza. We discussed this yesterday, but here you use the diminutive suffix from Italian, which is pizza and pizzetta, and you combine it with a German component. So to conclude, now, of course, we have to monitor our word lists over time in order to be able to distinguish between occasionalisms and neologisms. Of course, we have to do more data cleaning, so to remove duplicates and near duplicates, and our software is available on an open source license, and you can access it through this link. Then thank you for your attention. All questions are welcome. If you have specific question on technical stuff, please refer to Egon Stemle, who cannot be here today. Thank you.
All right, we have time for one question, if anyone has a question. Anyone?
I think that pizzetta is already in the Dutch dictionary.
Oh.
I'm not sure, but I think that pizzetta is even in the Dikke van Dalen, which is a monolingual Dutch dictionary. Can you check this? Sure. Oh, it will be up from October.
I have a question. It may be slightly technical, but then I'm as ignorant as you are, and maybe someone in the audience knows. I wonder how you control the robots that you crawl the pages. How do you control that they're not crossing the border to, say, Austria or something like that? Is that possible?
Yeah, we had this a list of seed URLs. These were URLs of magazines, online newspapers used in the region only, and then for crawling only the sub-pages were used.
Okay, so it were specific URLs that you had already on a list?
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Selected URLs. Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Thank you.
All right, well, thanks. That's great.
Thank you.